On the evening of July 25, 1998, the residents of Sonobe, a small rural community in Wakayama Prefecture, Japan, gathered for their annual summer festival. There was music, there were games, there were children running between the stalls as the sun went down. And there was curry, prepared communally as it had been every year, served from large pots to anyone who wanted it. By midnight, 67 people had become violently ill. By the following week, 4 of them were dead. Investigators who tested the curry found arsenic, enough to kill, placed there deliberately by someone who had stood in that same crowd, eaten that same food, and watched. It took 4 years to charge anyone. The woman eventually arrested lived 3 minutes from the festival grounds. Her name was Masumi Hayashi, and what investigators uncovered about her in the years that followed made the curry the least disturbing part of the story. The Sonobe Neighborhood Association's Summer Festival was an annual fixture in the community's calendar. It was not a large event. Approximately 200 residents attended each year. Families, elderly couples, children from the local school. The curry was a tradition. It had been served at the festival for years, prepared by volunteers from the neighborhood association using a recipe that had not changed in a decade. On the evening of July 25, 1998, the curry was prepared in 4 large pots. Volunteers began serving at approximately 6:30 p.m. By 8 p.m., most attendees had eaten. The first reports of illness came within hours. Residents began calling emergency services late that night. Nausea, vomiting, severe abdominal pain. By the early hours of July 26th, ambulances had made multiple trips between Sonobe and the nearest hospital. 67 people were admitted or treated. The symptoms were consistent and severe. The first death occurred on July 27th. 3 more followed over the next 5 days. The victims ranged in age from 10 to 84. They had nothing in common except that they had attended the festival and eaten the curry. When health authorities tested the remaining curry from the festival pots, the results were unambiguous. Arsenic trioxide had been introduced into the food, not in trace amounts, but in a concentration sufficient to cause acute poisoning in anyone who consumed a standard serving. The quantity detected indicated deliberate introduction by someone with access to the pots during the preparation or serving process. This was not contamination. This was not an accident. Someone had poisoned the communal food supply of an entire neighborhood. Wakayama Prefectural Police launched a criminal investigation immediately. What they faced was a crime with 200 potential witnesses and no clear suspect, because whoever had added the arsenic had done so in a public space, surrounded by people, without being seen. Or so it appeared. The investigation that followed was one of the most forensically complex in Japanese criminal history. 200 attendees had been present at the festival. All of them had access, in theory, to the area where the curry was prepared and served. Investigators interviewed every one of them. They reviewed every photograph taken at the event. They examined every piece of physical evidence recovered from the festival grounds. The arsenic, they determined, had been introduced into one specific pot, the pot that had been positioned nearest to the serving area, the one most frequently accessed during the serving process. Whoever had added it had done so in a window of approximately 30 minutes during the busiest period of the evening, when movement around the serving area would have been least conspicuous. It was, investigators noted, an act that required either extraordinary nerve or extraordinary familiarity with the environment, or both. Masumi Hayashi was 34 years old at the time of the festival. She lived in Sonobe with her husband, Kenji Hayashi, who ran a pest control business from their home. She had been an active member of the neighborhood association for several years and had volunteered at previous festivals. She knew the layout of the serving area. She knew the routine. She had also, investigators discovered, been purchasing arsenic. Kenji Hayashi's pest control business used arsenic-based compounds as part of its standard operations, a common practice in Japan at the time for certain types of extermination work. The business maintained a supply. Masumi had access to it. When investigators examined the Hayashi household's financial records, what they found reframed the entire investigation. In the years preceding the festival, Masumi Hayashi had taken out life insurance policies on multiple people in her immediate circle: her husband, relatives, acquaintances. The total insured value ran into tens of millions of yen. Several of the people she had insured had subsequently become ill or died under circumstances that, viewed individually, had not raised significant concern. Viewed together, they formed a pattern that prosecutors would later describe as a systematic program of murder for financial gain, stretching back years before the festival. The curry poisoning, investigators came to believe, was not Masumi Hayashi's first act of this kind. It was simply the one that had been impossible to miss. Masumi Hayashi was arrested in October 1998, 3 months after the festival. The case against her was built on 3 pillars. First, her access to arsenic through her husband's business. Second, her presence at the festival and her familiarity with the serving area. Third, the insurance policies, the financial architecture that prosecutors argued provided motive not just for the festival poisoning, but for a series of earlier deaths and illnesses in her circle. Her defense was consistent and absolute. She had not done it. She had been at the festival as a volunteer and a neighbor. The arsenic in the curry had not come from her. The insurance policies were legitimate financial planning, not evidence of premeditation. The trial proceeded through the Japanese court system for 4 years. The turning point came from an unlikely source. A strand of hair recovered from the festival site was subjected to arsenic analysis, a technique that can determine from the pattern of arsenic deposits along the length of a hair shaft the timeline of a person's exposure to the substance. The analysis of Masumi Hayashi's hair indicated repeated arsenic exposure over a period of months preceding the festival, consistent, prosecutors argued, with regular handling of the substance in preparation for its use. Her defense challenged the methodology. The scientific debate over hair arsenic analysis and its reliability as evidence occupied significant portions of the trial proceedings. The court found the evidence, taken in combination with the financial records and the circumstantial case, sufficient. In 2002, Masumi Hayashi was convicted of murder. She was sentenced to death. She has maintained her innocence throughout. In interviews conducted from prison, she has described the conviction as a miscarriage of justice and the evidence against her as circumstantial and selectively interpreted. Her legal team has filed multiple appeals. All have been rejected. What struck observers throughout the trial, and what has continued to define coverage of the case in the years since, was not what Masumi Hayashi said in court. It was how she said it. Calm, precise, unmoved by the testimony of survivors, describing what the poisoning had done to their bodies, to their families, to the community they had shared. Investigators who had worked the case for years described it as the most chilling thing they had ever witnessed in a courtroom. Not the crime, the composure. The Sonobe community has never held the summer festival again. The neighborhood association that organized it for decades dissolved in the years following the poisoning. The families who lost members have largely declined to speak publicly about the case in the years since the trial. The survivors, the 63 people who became ill and recovered, have described in the limited interviews they have given a particular kind of damage that the physical recovery did not address. It is the damage of having eaten food prepared by neighbors in a space you had considered safe, at an event you had attended every year of your life. It is the damage of knowing that the person who put the arsenic in the curry was someone you knew, someone whose children went to the same school, someone who had handed you a bowl. The Wakayama curry poisoning case prompted significant changes to Japanese regulations governing the sale and storage of arsenic compounds. Restrictions that had been relatively loose for agricultural and pest control purposes were tightened substantially in the years following the case. The specific regulatory gap that had allowed a pest control business to maintain an arsenic supply without detailed accounting was closed. Masumi Hayashi remains on death row. She is in her early 60s. Under Japanese law, death sentences are carried out by hanging, typically without advance notice to the condemned. She has been on death row for over 20 years. Her husband Kenji was also eventually charged in connection with earlier poisoning incidents linked to the insurance scheme. Allegations that the festival poisoning, once it had forced investigators to look back, had made impossible to ignore. His case added another layer to a story that had begun as a community tragedy and expanded through years of investigation into something far more premeditated and far more extensive than a single evening at a summer festival. 4 people died in Sonobe on July 25, 1998. They had gone to a festival. They had eaten curry. They had trusted the people around them.